Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Magic Manifesting Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Monica, and today we're going to be talking about detaching. So, if you're new here, this podcast is your space to shift your mindset, realign your energy, trust in your innate gifts, and ultimately become abundant AF. So, we don't just talk about the woo here. We also discuss the science, the psychology, and the practical ways for you to manifest your desires and make that money. So let's go ahead and let's get into it today. So, first, what is detaching? So, first of all, let's start off with attachment. So, a lot of times we have all of these ties, these energetic ties to what we desire. And this makes it to where it comes from a place of lack. So it means that when we're thinking about what we want in our lives, what happens is because we're like, oh, I have to have this. I have to have this in order for this and this and this to happen. I have to have this. Or if I had this, then I could finally do X, Y, and Z. Like let's say there's a contest for you to win $2,500. You're like, oh my gosh, if I could win that, then I could finally pay off these medical bills that I have, or I could finally get ahead in my bills, and gosh, that would be so nice. And yes, it's important to sit there and visualize the impact of whatever it is on your life. But when we put too much pressure on it, it doesn't perform. And so another way you can look at it too is, have you ever tried to hold on really tightly to either like a fistful of dry sand or sugar or something like that? And what will inevitably happen is some of those grains will fall out of your hands because the more tightly you hold it, there's gaps in your fingers and in your hands. At least that's the way it is for me. If you're able to do it, kudos to you. But but for most of us, I would say that those grains start to come out of our hands. And that's exactly what happens when we try and put too much attachment onto the things that we want. So, with that being said, detachment is exactly that. It is when we have something that we want to desire, but we're no longer putting the attachment on it. So, we are detaching from that. So, I would love to give you an example from my own life. So this goes back a little bit. So some of the memories regarding it are a little hazy, but I do remember most of it. So I manifested a 2-week trip to China when I was a sophomore in high school. And not only did I manifest the trip, I mean, like, I got a scholarship that paid for the entire trip. So let me get into a little bit about the background of it, and then we'll talk about how I was actually able to manifest it. So first of all, there's this program. It's a wonderful program called People to People Student Ambassadors, and it was founded by D. Eisenhower. And basically, it was created to bridge the gap between nations and cultures, starting with our young people, so that way they could foster better and more diplomatic relationships with people of other nations. It's a fantastic program. So you do have to be, if you're a student, you do have to be nominated by one of your teachers or somebody else that knows you, like that. Not like a parent or anything. It has to be like a teacher or someone in the school system, I do believe. And then if you're an adult, if you are a teacher, a nurse, or like some other professions, then you're able to be a chaperone. Now, now that I'm, in my 30s, in my mid 30s, I would never volunteer to chaperone a bunch of kids in a foreign country. Like, there's no way that I would want to do that. Would I love to go on another people to people trip? Absolutely. It was fantastic. But I just don't know if I would want to have that kind of responsibility because so much stuff would happen. So, but, but if that's your jam, then definitely go for it. So, um, I could talk about this trip. It could be its own little show, its own little podcast because it was just so amazing. I absolutely loved it. I would go back 100 times more doing the same things that we did. It was absolutely wonderful. But anyways, so at the time that I was nominated, it was right after Hurricane Ivan and Hurricane Katrina. So Hurricane Ivan made landfall in October of 2024. And then Hurricane Katrina made landfall in August of 2025. So During Hurricane Ivan, I lived with my family in this mobile home that was my grandfather's. It wasn't a permanent situation, but it was a nice little place. He always kept it really nice. And what happened is that it got destroyed. We ended up living well, my parents lived in the van that they had. I lived in the loft above my dad's mechanic studio, and my oldest brother, he lived in his van. Now we did have access to water because my dad's shop. Once we finally got power, we had access to a deep freezer. We had a grill, and then probably about once a week or so, we could go over to my grandfather's place and do laundry and take showers. But it was rough. My grades suffered that year. I mean, I still did good, but it wasn't easy. And then eventually, we got a FEMA camper. It was a teeny tiny one where there's like a master bedroom, and then there's like the two bunk beds that are like in a corner, and there's a tiny little bathroom. I live in a camper now, which I absolutely love, but it's a two bedroom, one and a half bath. It's pretty big. Um, but anyhow, the and we lived in that for months and months and months. I can't remember exactly, but we got the FEMA camper in the winter time. I remember that. So it was either like December or January, and it had to have been at least December because I remember we had a like teeny tiny little Christmas tree, and and I remember us decorating it Night Before Christmas theme. Um, but we had that until I believe April of technically that next year in 2005. So that was when I was a freshman in high school. So turn back around when I became a sophomore, I had gotten nominated first part of the year, obviously, for doing the people to people student ambassador program. And we went to the meeting. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. I want to do this. And so my mom and I were like, we got to find a way to make it to where I can go on this trip. But it was like, I think it was like $6,000 or $6,500. And that included everything. That included your meals, that included your stay, that included all of the activities, that included your flight. It was everything. Now, remember, this was back in 2005, so things are a lot more expensive now. And I'm sure they probably got discounts and things like that because it was a big group and because it was not necessarily through the government, but it was like government adjacent. So, anyways, I ended up trying all sorts of things. I tried selling different things. I made like little crafts, all these things to try and make some money. There were many, many, many nights or many, many days where my mom and I went to like the flea market to sell stuff, these crafts, which didn't really sell. I mean, every now and then we went to like, we would set up booths with other people that were trying to raise money. I mean, it was like we really tried hard, but it was just not working. And I was too young at the time to, have like a regular job. Well, I guess I could have had a regular job, but I didn't yet. I did later on in that year, but I didn't at the time, right? And so, and I was involved in extracurriculars, so it's not like I had like all of the time in the world. But that's not to say we tried. We tried hard. And we asked for money from our families and our friends and stuff like that. Like family friends, because I was a child, so like my friends didn't have any money. Um, but they said no, which that's a whole nother thing for a whole nother day. But they said no. So, but I kept the money back that I had saved, and I was like, well, we're just gonna have to keep pushing at it, right? Well, at some point in like the winter area, right? Like I had already technically signed up for the people to people. I was just trying to raise the money for it because, you had a good little bit of time before you had to have all of the money in. Well, I got a letter, and the letter had said that they were doing a scholarship for kids who were impacted by Hurricane Katrina. Now, remember, Hurricane Katrina, that happened in August of 2005. And so it wasn't just, it was so just for where I lived, just that county, the students that were affected there. And I'm sure they probably had, similar scholarships for other areas, but this was just for our area. So Hurricane Katrina didn't actually affect my area very bad at all. We had a few down trees, we were out of power for a few days, but it really didn't affect us very much. Now, if you look at New Orleans, it was devastating to them. And even parts of Mississippi were really, really bad. But where I lived, not so much. So we ended up, not really having that big of an impact. And when I got this letter, I was like, well, we weren't really affected by Katrina, but I was affected by Ivan, like I just told you guys, right? And so my mom's like, well, write him about that. And I was like, okay. And so we both kind of had the idea like, what will it hurt? Right. So I wrote up this little, page. I don't think it was more than a page, but basically explained to them what I just explained to you guys about all of the things that had happened to get me through Hurricane Ivan, like what happened beforehand, what happened during, what happened after, all of that in a more concise way, and just kind of let it be. And I didn't really think about it. I mean, I was like, hey, that'd be kind of cool. And then I found out that I had won the scholarship. Me and one other person had won the scholarship. Now, I wrote that little blurb, that little page about Hurricane Ivan. And they were asking about Hurricane Katrina. And they still gave me the scholarship. So all of that worry that I had left. I didn't have to worry about getting the money. And any of the money that I did raise, I actually ended up using to buy me a camera to use while I was in China. But what happened, the reason why I was able to manifest that scholarship and that trip was because I completely detached from that outcome. I knew that it was a long shot. And I was like, yeah, that'd be so sick. That'd be so awesome. But if I don't get it, okay, that's all right. It was a long shot, anyways, right? So, not having all of that pressure on winning, I truly believe is part of the reason why I won that. So, I just wanted to give you guys that example. I think it's a fantastic example of detaching. And I have so many examples like that in my life, but that is probably the most notable one. And I wanted to share that with you guys. So let's shift the energy, babe. So I want you to give this a try. So do it with something small. So think that you want to manifest a quarter or dollar or something like that. In your mind, define what that means to you. Could this be you have to actually have it in hand, like physically, like it's on the ground or something? Or could it also be like a savings at the store, like something was discounted? So define what that means in your mind. I suggest actual physical money. Somebody gives it to you, or you find it on the ground, or something like that. But something that doesn't mean much. Don't do like I said, $2,500. Just try something simple, right? So when you do that, don't put any pressure on it. Just be like, oh, hey, if I got an extra dollar, that'd be pretty cool, Or, if I found a penny on the ground, heads up, heck yeah, good luck, right? And then see if it comes true. And I'm telling you, I bet you it will. Just don't put pressure on that outcome. Detach from it. And I know that I'm saying detach from it like, oh, it's this easy thing. I know that it's not always easy. Trust me. I know that it's not always easy. But if you get used to doing it with the smaller things, then it'll be easier with the bigger things. And I just want to say this is a topic that I'm probably going to touch on multiple times because it is so, so important. But I'm going to leave that with you guys now. And I'm going to go ahead and close this circle out. So, one thing that you can do to help you shift your energy around money and including detaching, but also how your subconscious views money, all of that is for you to join my 90-day manifestation and abundance challenge. Now, I run a live session of this every so often, and then I also have a pre-recorded version. Now, if neither of those work for you or you're not a video person, then I do have a companion journal that is currently available on Amazon. So I will link to all of that below. But I have had a wonderful time with you guys. Try the detachment exercise. I hope you do join me for the 90-day manifestation abundance challenge. But if you don't, I will see you on the next episode. This has been a wonderful session of the Magic Manifesting Mindset podcast with your host, Monica. Happy manifesting.